onto dead. Hi, welcome. We are back, continuing our painting stream for our D&D show. We paint here on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Mostly.
When we're here. And we paint things that we 3D print here at home and go on to use in our D&D campaign, which we stream at 2 p.m. Eastern on Sundays, typically. I am working on this super fancy Crypt. I've been working on it for a little while now. Almost done with the base coat, and then I need to do a whole bunch of detailing and make the marble look more like marble, and then a lot of cleanup, and then weathering. Hi, book streams, welcome. So that's sort of where I'm at on my Crypt, and hopefully it'll look pretty nice by the end of the stream. Probably won't finish though.
I'm painting this Viking house, and I very, very cleverly did this wonderful weathered yellow before I did all of these wooden parts here. So now I need to very carefully and slowly paint in all the wooden parts without getting it on the weathered yellow, because then I'd have to start over with that. So we'll see how this goes today.
And your timing was impeccable from the sounds of it. First things first, I have one more statue to paint silver, because they're going to be sort of these cast iron statues that have weathered and rusted over time, I decided. So I'm going to start with some silver, and I will be getting those painted in. I'm a little manic today, so we'll see how just running all over the place today, so we'll see how steady I am at this.
I have to be less steady than I have to be with this stuff.
Until I start cleaning.
So, well, here goes nothing. Well, something.
Hi, Raz. We've been doing pretty good. We were obviously off on Friday because we were doing some family events. But it's nice. It's been all over the place here lately, so it's nice to sort of start getting back into a regular rhythm. Which it's just starting, so hopefully it'll stick. Because I'm someone who needs a pretty firm schedule to keep myself sort of stable emotionally. So it's been a little difficult for me with all of the running around that's been happening here. But we're past that now, and hopefully things will be settling down.
Well, there's one out of 1, 2, 3, 4. Many.
One of your wood
wooden beams.
wood beam, or
Okay.
part of a wooden beam.
Yeah, that's half a wooden beam. So that's it. We'll see what happens with the rest.
Yeah, it can sometimes. It can get a little overwhelming, but I find being able to just sit down and paint like this is something that helps quite a bit, because I am sort of forced to slow down and take my time. And it's one of those things where if I don't schedule myself to do it, I'm not gonna do it. So, you know, it's good that I have this.
For me, it's good to know I can still hold things steadily enough to do it.
Yeah, it's always good to have a distraction when things get a little rough, whether it's painting, Minecraft, some music, whatever works for each person can be very valuable. To just have some go-to that you can sort of take a breather from. And this is one of those for me. And I think streaming it live actually helps in that regard, because it's like I have to meet a time. I have to start it at the right time, or else, I'm not just procrastinating for myself. I don't know if that makes much sense. But I'm sort of in that, I don't know, I'm sort of like that. I just hope it's sort of entertaining for people who pop in and out, at least, to be able to watch. So, once I get all the silver on these statues, which I'm getting close to, I have one last unpainted area, which is these windows here. I'm just gonna put black in them, I think, just to make it simple. Because they're just sort of flat. They don't have like any grading over them or anything like that. So just like yawning empty portals, I think might be a good sort of touch.
Should I crypt ventilation?
Yeah, I guess so. You don't want it too smelly in your crypt. So I think I have all of the statues silvered now. I'm just gonna give it a quick once over, make sure I didn't miss a spot like right there, for example. So I always like to stop and look over what I'm painting periodically. Especially when you're painting something like silver on gray, it's extremely easy to sort of miss a little spot. But it looks like I'm generally in the clear. So, clean off my brush. And I have the black here. So I might do two things since I'll have the black out. The first thing I'll do is fill in these windows, the inside of the windows with black, to create that sort of effect. And since I have the black out and on my brush, I might start working on some of the marbling effect on the ivory color. Drink, and then so with this black, I'm going to be trying my best to just keep it in the very back of the window, so I'm not getting black on the edges of the brick. That'd be kind of a pain to fix. Oh, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope things get a little better today. I have no idea what that must be like, so I just hope it's that you're doing okay now, and or at least you'll be doing better soon. Well, I got a little spot where I didn't want it, but there, that's gonna be... Well, yeah, I don't know too much like that, but that sounds extremely stressful. So, I hope it gets better today. Have you messed up your yellow anywhere yet?
No.
Oh.
I've got almost one side done. I'm cheating a little bit by not going, like on these windows, and then the beam's not going really close to the yellow.
Oh.
But I don't think you can really see that, though.
And once it's all washed and everything, the wood, you probably won't notice.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually kind of indented in the inset because of the way the print went. So I think it'll be very invisible.
And you say cheated, but really in painting, it's if it works and it looks good, that's a perfectly acceptable way to do it. So, if there's a shortcut or something to get the effect you want, don't don't feel bad about taking it. So I just put in the black in these little windows, and it doesn't really like stand out much, but it makes the whole thing look a little more cohesive and like give it some depth, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that works really well.
So I'll do the same to the other side, and then I'll maybe move on to trying to do some marble sort of effects on the white parts of this crypt. I was about to say sepulcher, which I think is technically accurate as well, but we just have a whole lot of different words for crypts and graves and stuff. And maybe someday we'll have to fight like a lich or something in the
Crypt sepulcher.
In the crypt sepulcher graveyard mausoleum. Was it mausoleum I decided I was going to use? I don't even know.
Crypt. Because a mausoleum is more like a huge structure with multiple.
Which, I don't know, this could be if it's for pixies.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't pixies have intense burial rites?
So that means that we're going to be running into a band of undead pixies.
Undead pixies, exactly. Who knows?
Will they bring a potluck?
Since we're leaving the only place we've ever adventured in, I have no idea what we're getting into.
No, we haven't left yet.
I know, but we're pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
We're leaving.
We're hoping to. With all sorts of new identities.
That you two will have to come up with. I've already made mine. That's cute. I feel like this black paint takes a little longer to dry than some of the others for some reason. And, you sort of start to pick up on the peculiarities of your paints the more you use them. Okay, so I think with the black there, I have like the base coats done. What I'll do next, I think, is work on my marbling. It's gonna sort of be a see how it goes kind of situation. I don't think I've particularly done much marbling. And something I'm gonna do is look up a reference on my phone. I'm just gonna look for like white marble, basically. And check some images find one that I sort of like. What do I like? Sort of look for the sort of marble I want and this. Give myself some visual ideas. You know, even something as simple as like that can give you sort of the concept of like the wispy marble effect that I'm looking for. And then I'll just set it up over somewhere so I can sort of visually refer to it periodically while I'm working on this. And I think for this sort of thing, I'm definitely going to do a bit of sort of a dry brush on it. Because it tends for white marble to look very wispy, it looks like. So I would like my brush.
So maybe it's a crypt for wisps instead of sprites.
Because it's wispy.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good, actually. I'll let you have that one.
I thought it was pretty lame, but I said it anyway. I should have whispered it.
Boy. And the thing with dry brushing is, well, it lets you get... Oh, hello, Wolfpack Legends. Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks for joining.
Any questions about what we're doing, feel free to ask. Right now, I have sort of my base coat down on this crypt I'm doing, and I'm trying out my hand at dry brushing a little black onto this ivory in order to create sort of a marble look. So, we'll see how it goes, basically. Yes, this is a piece that we're going to be using for our campaign, our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Not sure when particularly, but everything we paint on here generally ends up in the campaign. And we figured since we're printing and painting them, we might as well stream the process, let people see, and it can be kind of fun to see something that you get to... I feel like it can be fun to see something you saw painted show up in the campaign. You know, we stream the campaign every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I think we narrowly avoided combat last session, so we didn't have too much show up last session, but the session before that we had a number of fights in the woods.
Many fights in the woods.
In a row, without any rest.
Were they gnomes or something that kept...
Hobgoblins kept chasing us.
Yeah. Somehow we kept escaping.
Well, we had horses. That helps.
But you collected 2 free spears.
Yeah, all I had to do is have them go through my side. Hey, that's the great thing about D&D is you don't need big props, big 3D props. I've been playing since middle school, and this is my first time we've ever had these big 3D props. We spent most of our time playing using the theater of the imagination style, where you just have a description and you kind of go with that. Eventually, we upgraded to a grid map, that dry erase grid map, that we spent ages and is a giant mess because it doesn't always come off perfectly each time. I think we use wet erase actually, but
it didn't always erase.
It didn't always erase, and eventually we got to the point where we had little character models, either purchased or painted ourselves, that we would use on that, which was fun. But honestly, we haven't had much time or anything using big 3D props like this. It wasn't until the end of 2019 when my wife decided she wanted to get into 3D printing for fun. I'm she, her, and my dad here is he, him.
Hi, thanks
for asking. All right, good to know, Wolfpack. Thank you. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, my wife wanted to get into 3D printing just because she thinks it's really cool. So we bought one of the 3D printers we have back here. They're not actively running.
Can you see them?
Yeah, he can
sort of
see some of them, I think. You're kind of blocking them, but that's fine.
Okay.
No,
There we go.
They're not even running.
But there they are. They're blue and black. They're very blue and blacky.
And we just, after a while, we were just like, hey, I know how to paint miniatures. I used to do Warhammer back in the day, Fantasy Warhammer. Why don't we 3D print a bunch of miniatures and use them for D&D? It's a lot cheaper than purchasing. And we've been doing that ever since, and we figured we actually started the channel by we were just getting sort of set up to play digitally during the pandemic with some of our friends, and it kind of just ballooned out from there.
Yep. And they decided to broadcast. Why not?
Do you think with a wash that'll look convincing? On the steps?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even put wash on it, or very, very little.
Well, it's supposed to be an ancient structure.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my little attempt at marbling on the steps there.
It's very well done. It's really good.
We'll see how it goes when I do all the rest.
So
Thank you.
I have to apologize for not interacting much. I wear trifocals.
Yes.
And I have to take them off in order to paint up close, but then I can't read the screen.
So I do most of the
talking,
the chatting. But my dad plays with us on our stream and everything. He plays a Furbolg fighter. I play a changeling druid, and our friend David Wong plays a tabaxi bard.
I started playing in Madison, Wisconsin when the game first came out.
Yes, you've been playing
forever.
As I started more in middle school, which was not in the 70s. Yeah. I don't know. It sounds like you haven't done much model painting, but if you do have any questions about what we're doing, I try to generally explain things as I go, but I don't always remember what I need to say. So
yeah. So on this model, it's weathered yellow. These need to be painted brown like that. So I'm very carefully painting the brown and not getting on the yellow, which I don't want to redo because I can't. I can get the brown on the stone on the bottom because that's easy to repaint, but replicating the weathered yellow, not so much.
you got your cat book streams. That's good. I'm surprised our cats haven't come yelled at us yet. We have 2 cats in the house, and they will periodically come and yell while we're painting. One of them also likes to jump up on the table while we're streaming our D&D game. So that's always fun. We call him the Tabaxi God. And having never really painted marble before, this is a interesting experience for me. I'm not quite sure why I chose to make these marble, but I did, and I can't back away now.
Oh, actually, you could just paint over them.
Well, yes, you can always. That's the nice thing about painting is you can always just paint back over it. It's almost impossible to make a permanent mistake with model painting. Just the only mistakes that you can make, the only thing it costs is time to fix it. So it's actually kind of relaxing knowing that you can always go back over what you're doing. I feel like that's one thing a lot of people who are new to artistic endeavors are afraid of is sometimes they view erasing as an admission of failure or something to that effect. But redoing and erasing and changing things is a really important part of the process to making anything, whether it's painting or drawing or anything that has sort of an artistic quality to it. It's kind of almost more important than being good at the putting things down is learning that it's okay to undo it or do it over. It's I don't know. I just find like I've been trying to teach my wife how to draw because she's finally gotten slightly confident about it, and that's one of the hurdles that we encountered early on. It was just being okay making a mistake and having to redo it. Is that looking right?
Yeah. You're actually getting that really well.
Am I? It looks kind of messy to me.
If you look at marble is just random.
Random splotches. Yeah, I know. I'm... Let's see if I can... There's the focus. And I'm going to put a wash over pretty much everything on here because I want it to look like an ancient tomb. But for the time being, I need to get sort of this base in. And this marble, I don't know, first time doing it. And like I was just saying, I'm sure I'm making some mistakes. And I will make mistakes as I go along. But if I do, I can just take the ivory paint and go back over it and start fresh. One of the nice things about dry brushing is that, well, not nice, but one of the things about doing a dry brush like this, which what that means is I put some paint on my brush and then dab a lot of it off. It really lets you control the amount of paint you're going to put on things and create much lighter effects, but it does also mean you have to reload a lot. Reload your brush because it will run dry very quickly. Exactly. I've been, yes, as Bookstream says, I've been slowly, oh my god, slowly using dry brushing to make this pterodactyl shape. This is the head. A lot of this pterodactyl is from when I was painting some houses, and our metallic paint is a bit thinner than some of our other paints, and it tends to soak up into the brush very quickly. And when I was doing the sort of metal around a window, I had to do a lot of more dry brushing because it was such a thin paint. And I ended up intentionally making this sort of pterodactyl head. We'll see how far it goes body-wise. So it's coming along. I'm not in love with it, but basically marble is just splotches, and when it all gets toned down a little with a black wash, it'll look a lot more cohesive, I think. One thing I'm sort of running into is I am very obstinate about not using a brush until it's like done. And this brush is definitely on the much older side. So it's getting a little frayed and a little difficult to work with. I'm occasionally getting like a loose little piece here and there. But I'm like, I can still use it. Why would I change it even though I have a bunch of new brushes that I already purchased? But I'm sure I'll keep using it for way longer than I should. That's one thing that can help with art is getting the right tool for what you're doing. Um, Sometimes people get frustrated because it's hard to make, I don't know, whatever you're working on, when in reality you're actually fighting against the wrong tool for what it is you're looking to do. So something like if you're doing graphite drawing and you're finding you're having a hard time erasing it, you might need a harder pencil. Or if you're not able to get the amount of contrast, the light and dark that you want, you might be using a pencil that's too hard. Um, just like as a quick example. So it never hurts to sort of educate yourself on what sort of tools are needed for the thing you're looking to do. Because you might be trying to draw, you know, a Renaissance painting with a Crayola crayon, and it's just not gonna really. You might be able to accomplish something fantastic with it, but it might give you more of a headache than you're hoping for doing that. Um, Kind of like trying to screw in a bolt with a just pair of regular pliers rather than a a wrench. I got something on my brush. A little piece of flake of paint. Oh, that's super cute. Yeah, one of our cats spends about 20 hours a day sleeping, and I think the other one spends about 2 hours a day sleeping, and the rest of his time meowing.
He does make a lot of conversation. I'm sort of learning on the go here with the marble. But it has sort of like, based on some of the pictures I was looking at, because I think it's always valuable when you're doing something, especially something new, but almost any time to use a reference. So I just looked up white marble on my phone to try and give myself an idea of what sort of looks there are for it.
And it is very sort of splotchy, sort of veins running through the stone. So as I work through this, it has this sort of splotchy mottled look, and when I do the wash over everything, a lot of the definition that's a little hard to see. There's some faces up here, for example, um, will really start to shine through, because right now it's all one single color effectively, and the wash which is just a super thin paint. Um, that tends to seep into all the cracks and sort of bring out the three-dimensionality of any given piece. Kind of adds the effects of shadows and things like that. That, well, technically will cast shadows on its own. It is three-dimensional. It really creates that sense of depth once the wash is applied. And once I get through all of this marble, which will take a while, and that's okay. Once I get through all of it, I have a big cleanup process to do. It's probably not easy to see from a distance, but like if I close up, like along here, I got some of the ivory on the gray stone. It just happens when you're working with a liquid. What I can do is just go through and carefully cover up all of those random splotches and fix lines between things, between different parts of the model and different colors, before I go to sort of the final stage of weathering it down. What do you think?
You can definitely tell it's marble now.
Yeah?
Yeah, it came out really well.
Okay. And when I'm done with everything, the very last step will be to glue the roof onto the rest of the crypt. And then have to start over because I messed it up somehow. That's what I'm guessing. This brush is definitely having some struggles. It's on the it's losing bristles here and there, and those loose bristles translate to
A mess.
a mess if you're not careful. So I will probably be retiring this brush if I can bring myself to. Maybe by the end of this model. And the fun thing about learning something new on a figure like this is that by the time I'll get to the end of it, I'll be a lot better at it than when I started, and I'll look back and be like, that first part sucks, and want to redo it.
Yeah, that's another lesson, is that you get good at something
And the last
just
part,
as you finish it.
But there's nothing wrong with learning something while you do it. I mean, if you really want to get into model painting, for example, you know, watching tutorial videos, things like that can be valuable for sure. But at some point, you need to just get the experience. So you guys pick up some like cheaper models to practice on, or 3D print your own if you have that option available. And just sort of go, you know, because almost every technical skill, I don't know how true this is, but there's always like, people say it's like the, what is it, 10,000 hours to like master something. Where you, after doing something for 10,000 hours, some number like that,
Some large number with a comma in it.
Then
you're finally good at it.
Then you're finally like master at it. Like, and I think what a lot of people have in their heads about something like painting or art in general is that it's like a born talent, something that is inherent in someone. And it's a technical skill. It's something you practice and get better at and do more. Generally speaking, the people who are really good at art early, they're interested in doing it, so they do it more. And that just helps you get better at it the more you do it. And it can really start to seem like a talent or like, something that you need to be born with to do. But it's like playing a guitar or writing or anything like that, doing comedy. Like, it's something that the more you do it, the better you are. Some people are maybe more predisposed towards it, like just out of like interest or out of having been exposed to it early. But I honestly think that doing something like this or any artistic endeavor is something anyone can do if they're willing to take the time to learn it. And I'm far and away from an expert at any of this. There's definitely better model painters out there, for sure. I mean, I'm learning how to do marble on the fly right now. There's definitely better, just illustrators, things like that than me. I drew our characters for our D&D game and stuff just because I like drawing and I am free for myself to do that.
You don't pay yourself?
No.
You pay yourself a compliment?
Nope, never. But I know I'm far and away from the best, but it's something I know I can do and feel comfortable doing. So it's something that yeah. So if anyone watching or listening feels like, oh man, I'd love to do model painting, or I'd love to, do anything like make music, do art, do tax returns, I don't know, anything really. It's just a matter of buckling down and putting in the work, I guess.
Yeah. And as Nikki said, having the right tools.
That never hurts.
Yeah.
You can learn to draw in graphite with a real basic school pencil, but and that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. But you'll find doing a little bit of research on whatever endeavor it is, just to know what tools to use.
Like usually, like if you get a kit or something, the brushes you get are usually terrible. When we started with Warhammer. Can you hand me that red brush?
This one? Oh, the
Yeah.
Warhammer brush.
So yeah, you get these tiny little miniatures, right? And this is the brush they give you. And as you can see, it doesn't come to a point. The bristle's kind of frayed, and it's not detailed. It's like a 1-0 brush, maybe not even that. The bristles are okay. I mean, the material is okay, but you can't really paint detail with it. So we ended up investing in like 3-0 and 4-0 and 5-0 brushes. I tend to use 3-0 a lot.
I'm right
for
now.
really fine stuff, not quite like one bristle, but it's there. You can see the 5-0.
I'm using 5-0 here, which I tend to use quite a bit.
To say it's a lot more fun to use a big bristle brush like this.
Oh, for covering surface area.
Yeah. Or this is my favorite brush.
The yellow one.
Because just slap on paint, and it's a really nice soft bristle.
But it can be a good. Another thing is like, okay, let's say you're painting the roof here, and you need it all to be brown because you're doing wood roof. Let's say. Even if you're gonna go in with detail, you need to get all this brown. Use a thicker brush. Don't use a small brush like this because it'll take. You can definitely get it done. It'll just take you
a long time,
forever to do it.
Yeah. So when we were painting Warhammer, investing in these smaller brushes suddenly made a huge difference. The other thing is it's really important to keep them very clean, because if paint builds up in them, like along the metal part here, or even
Keep talking.
Yeah, it'll gum up, and then it'll just make a mess. And even when you're painting, like when I was painting these little brown bits, I had to clean my brush twice because the paint will actually start drying in your brush, and it'll get stiff, and you won't get as fine a texture. So, sometimes if you're just feeling frustrated while you're painting, you might just need to get a different kind of brush or make sure it's clean. It might just really come down to that. Especially the fine ones, the really, really fine ones, like the 5-0s, the paint will dry up on those real quickly, and then instead of a fine point, you'll just end up with a blob of dry paint. Yeah, that won't work very well. So what do you say? I think that came out okay.
Yeah, it's looking good.
What color should I paint the door?
Yellow house, door.
Black maybe?
You could do black would be too dark. If you wanted to do black, I'd actually say do it in dark gray and then do a black wash over it.
Yeah.
So it would be near black, but not actually black. Because what you'll get with a black is like this with the
black,
windows.
Yeah. No texture of any kind.
Yeah.
What if I did like the field blue with a black wash?
Yeah, that would work.
The sea blue, I think, is too dark.
I think that would be reasonable.
Or just the dark gray with the black.
Either or.
I think the field blue. Give it a little more color. Which is here somewhere. Ah. And I think we decided that these upper parts are going to be a darker wood.
Yeah, they could be.
Those in flat ground.
What do you...
That's looking really good.
It needs the definition that'll come from using the wash, but to really help carry the image through, but it's a start.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just have to do the entire back half and the roof.
Yeah. Good thing you decided to put marble on it all.
Yeah, I should. Definitely better than just doing dark gray stone.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, is it dry cornbread? Welcome.
Hi.
We're just painting our 3D models. I'm doing a crypt. My dad here is doing a house.
Little house.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask. These are miniatures that we use for our D&D stream, which is on Sundays at 2. So if it's something you're interested in, it's kind of fun, I think, to see them in action after being painted. But right now I'm working on creating these sort of marble pillars, and I'm just putting in the veins of the marble as I go here, and this is all sort of a base coat that will be weathered and shaded as I go on. So it's not very exciting to look at now. It's very flat, but shading will eventually look more like this scorpion that I did recently. Just sort of he was sitting there, so I figured good example. But yeah, so I think yeah, I'm just continuing to go, and it looks like our music stopped. I'm not seeing that start anymore, so let me just start that up again. There we go. A little better for background. But yeah, I'm sort of learning on the go here with this marble. I've never painted marble before. It's an odd, inconsistent look. So it's a little intimidating, but I'm just gonna keep going with it and see how it looks in the end once I shade everything. That's one thing I remind myself, is that all of what I'm doing here is not the final product, but rather the undercoat, effectively, on finish, the basis for what I'm trying to ultimately create. And if I end up thinking it doesn't look great, I will paint over it, start again.
Well, that's definitely not a very inviting looking door.
No.
I don't know.
Does that have to be inviting?
No. No, I'm gonna paint next. I'm gonna paint these things up here, the roof ends and supports. And they are going to be brown, but a darker shade of brown than these, just to give us some contrast. And once I'm done with that, there's this massive amount of
Roof.
cedar shake roof that's going to take like half a jar of paint. All those nooks and crannies. And, I mean, the printing came out really nicely. It showed a lot of detail. But it's going to be a chore to get all that paint in there. I'm almost tempted to use a wash first just to get inside the crack.
I think how you should do it actually is take this super big thick brush and paint it this way.
You think so?
Just really load it up and go against it,
against the
and
roof.
that'll help fill in the gaps.
Well, I'll worry about that after I do this other one. But yeah, that's going to be just a lot of surface area. And then I'll probably want to highlight some of the shingles
with different browns.
Maybe some different browns just to give it some texture. Spend a lot of time washing it to make it look like it's been rained on and weathered. And
yeah, sort of an older roof. And just creating that inconsistent look.
This paint is pretty much gone.
Is that the flat brown?
Yeah.
I think there's another right over there.
Yeah, there's another one, but there's... we could probably salvage some of that by putting like a solvent in there, but then consistency would be all weird. So, bye.
Oh wow. You've chosen to give up on that one.
I only got 2 flat. Guess we're planning to use a lot of it.
Well, we have weirdly with D&D miniatures, you end up having a lot of wood structures. For some reason. Oh, it's like
wood and stone. There's
you're in a fantasy character universe where there's like everything's made out of wood and stone. So we barely ever use the yellow, for example.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. Or blue.
And just periodically I go back and look at what I already painted to try and make sure it looks consistent across everything that I'm doing. Especially since I'm sort of learning marble on the go. For this extremely fancy crypt. Yeah. And we're being a little quiet, just sort of continuing to chip away at what we're painting. But it's not. It's mostly I'm doing the same thing constantly here. So
You tried brushing little black squiggles.
a lot of black squiggles. I don't really like how that section turned out, but I think I can adjust it slightly. I'm just continuing to paint along this marble. I'm looking forward to being done with it so I can start the cleanup process, which is sometimes a little annoying because you're bouncing between colors a lot. But it's kind of an essential part of the whole thing. Making sure you get everything looking clean before you go over with all your washes and sort of finalize everything.
Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to put a lot of marble on their Crypt.
I know, I should have thought about what I was doing earlier, because I set myself up for a lot of work.
But it'll look great when it's done. So.
Well, maybe. There's a chance it will look great when it's done.
So now I'm taking the time, for some reason, to paint under the eaves where no one will ever see it.
It could theoretically be seen. I did the same here.
Yeah, because you just never know.
Because it was a small overhang with the roof, and You never know.
Might get a reflection
Or a camera angle or something. Because we do for combat have a low camera angle option. So it could theoretically become visible with something like that.
So we're not needing to be hugely careful, but just to color it in.
So that if it's slightly spotted, it looks consistent.
Mm-hmm. So the yellow doesn't show with a matte. Yeah, get this side. So in case you're wondering, I really don't use the bottle cap as like a reservoir or a holder for the paint. But when you shake up the paint, the cap gets all full of paint, and otherwise it just dries there and gets wasted.
Yeah, it ends up like this. Because I was using the top, but then it got a little too dry to keep using.
So we've kind of gotten to the habit of using the paint from the bottle cap first, because then it doesn't waste any paint, and it also keeps the cap from getting too gummed up
when you're putting it on and
when
off.
you put it back on, and sometimes then you can't get it back off. That's not helpful. So that's just about gone. So actually I'm going to start using it out of the jar.
I think I went too much on the black on this back pillar, so I might pair it back.
Yeah, just paint it ivory
with
over
ivory.
somewhere.
When I'm done with it.
Yeah, it's kind of really, you're right.
It's a little too colicky.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is just I've been doing a lot of it, and I'm getting a little impatient with it. Some of it is the brush is getting a little more
Full of paint and gummy.
full of paint and getting a little gummier. So there's a number of factors.
But you can make that go away by
pairing it back a little with some ivory. I mean, I generally agree with you there, by extremes, honestly, but...
So I painted off the edges where the colors meet, so I'm going to use the larger brush now to finish the rest of it because it'll just go faster. And there isn't any paint on paint contact there, so it's just a matter of getting these kind of cross pieces covered in this brown. And that does go a lot faster. This brush has a really nice flat end on it. So if I do have to touch something up, I can push paint up to it.
And get sort of the corners.
Without getting it too much on anything I don't want. Now I'm not going to be very careful here along the roof line, because those shingles are all going to get painted again later. So, a little extra paint slopping over there will be just fine. Get to see all the spots I missed earlier. I know Nikki's talking about dry brushing, which means that there's hardly any paint on the brush at all. But one thing I've learned is that sometimes having too little paint on the brush can really slow things down, especially when you're trying to get into little cracks and crevices and things.
Yeah, controlling the volume of paint for what you're doing is a very good skill to develop. You don't want too much, you don't want too little, depending on what you're doing, and
the viscosity of the paint.
The viscosity of the paint affects a lot.
One of the reasons we really like these paints is that they dry pretty quickly, but not too fast. They also don't show brush marks. And it's really hard to get drips in brush marks.
It is a very good paint for model painting. In our experience, at least. That's Tamiya paint is what we're using. In case anyone is curious. We do have, for some of the other colors, like the scarlet red and ivory that I'm using, is Vallejo paint.
Which are also really good.
Which have a very similar quality to them.
They're all acrylics. They're water soluble. So you clean up with water.
Which is convenient.
Yeah, you can actually thin them with water. Although, like, denatured alcohol will sometimes work better if you really need to thin them down. Or even, like, if you need a color and you can't get it, and you've got a dried up bottle of it. You've done this before. You can pull out your denatured alcohol with a little eyedropper and dissolve the pigments. It'll be thinner and dry a lot faster than the original, but you can match the color that way, which is kind of a nice thing sometimes.
Yeah. So I like how I did the ivory more on the front side than the back side, so I'm gonna have to clean up this a bit more. I went a little too heavy with the marbling. And before I tackle the roof, I'm actually going to work on that first, because otherwise it'll bother me.
You're going to take out some of the black?
Yeah. So how I'm going to do that, which might actually help the look a little, is just go over sections of it with the ivory, the base coat ivory. I don't know how much of this there is left, honestly. I used quite a bit on the Crypt, so...
I was going to order some, but I haven't yet.
There's enough for detailing, and get a little on my finger. That's always important. So, what I'm actually going to do is take this ivory and really, like, parse back some of my overzealousness And I could probably actually get a pretty good effect by doing this. And this is that erasing I was talking about earlier. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm consistent throughout, and having never done this before, I ended up not being consistent, which is honestly, it'll, even if it doesn't look realistically too much like marble, it will at least, being consistent in the look throughout will help it a lot more than being realistic.
Another thing when you learn when you're doing a line, like between one color and the other, sometimes it isn't so much the location of the line, but whether the line is smooth or straight or not. You know, like if the paint is dripping or something like that, then your line looks kind of yucky. But even if it's not exactly where you want it, if it's straight and smooth, then it'll look good.
Generally.
Usually.
And
for the
I'm
most part.
really leaning over here.
Yeah, you're going to hurt yourself doing that.
No, I'm stretching my back out. I don't have the most comfortable stool in the world here, so sometimes I need to stretch my back before I hurt myself.
My stool is a family heirloom.
Oh, I know.
So when I was a teenager, like between the ages of 11 and 17 or so, I used to build models in our basement.
Yeah.
And this is the same stool I used to sit on back then.
It's a continuation of the...
Continuation of the tradition. Okay, well, there's not much of a contrast between the darker brown and the lighter brown, but I think just enough to be a little more interesting. So, do I paint the roof shingles next, or do I do some wash on the base just to do it?
I like to finish my base coat fully before I go
Yeah, well, I guess that'll be it.
around with washes. Otherwise, you'll be like where you were with, you washed all this yellow, and then you have to be extra ultra careful doing the brown, because you otherwise you have to do the whole painting over again. So sort of developing a process, a work process, can be pretty valuable too. And that can be very much dependent on you. Like, I like to get base coat, clean up, wash, do everything, each thing fully. But there, I'm sure some people who like to do one part at a time, or you know, whatever kind of works for them. Is that looking a little better?
Yeah. That looks a lot better with the less veining. I have to get some more fresh water here.
Yeah, you've been cleaning your... Well, I haven't really switched between colors basically at all. Okay, so I have the base coat for the marble in the bottom here, I think. Which means I will do the marble on top here. Then I think I'll be at the stage where I can clean things up. Just clean up splotches, lines, things like that. I might add a little bit of lighter gray to the stonework on the bottom when I do that. We will see. Okay. Nothing to do but to do it. I'm gonna just put my model up a little so I can see the marble line. We have one of our cats meowing off in the distance.
So I'm going to try this, putting the wash into all the cracks and crevices, just in a section of the roof to see how it works. It's always easy to repaint it.
What kind of wash do you want?
Try the umber wash.
Umber?
Mm-hmm. The brown.
Is there an open one? Because we have several closed ones. I think by the purple line.
Mm-hmm. So I haven't tried this before. We're going to see how it turns out.
It's an experiment.
Yeah. Because this roof has a whole lot of texture to it. So what I'm going to do is take the umber wash, the brown wash, and wash it down this direction and see if I can't get it into all those little cracks and crevices. Otherwise, they're just going to show up as light gray later on, which will not be good. So, here we go. Of course, this isn't a real problem, because if it doesn't work, I'll just paint over it with something else. So when we wrap up here today, let's take a paint inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll order some more ivory. And we talked about getting some copper.
Yeah. Maybe a green wash. Well, we have green, so we could do a patina'd copper. The green wash we have. We use that for the sewers.
Mm-hmm. We have all sorts of different colored washes.
It's kind of useful, actually.
So yeah, maybe we could get on one of the sites and
order some new paints.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have a fair amount of umber and black wash.
Yeah, we got a bunch of that when it was hard to get.
You guys use more primer, right?
Mm-hmm. Although we do have the stuff we could put with the airbrush. That's something that I started using a long time ago and then stopped, is the airbrush. I know that a lot of places, people will use that constantly with their modeling. It gives you a
Very
really
consistent.
nice, consistent surface, especially for like military models.
Mm-hmm. And an airbrush is basically a air compressor that shoots through a little jar of paint. Mm-hmm. This is very basic.
Basically, that's what it is.
And aerosolizes and sprays it almost like a spray can, but a little even more consistent. Because rather than using compressed gases that are stored within the can, it's using a consistent pressure of air to just push it out.
The airbrush is also adjustable. So you could go from like a really wide spray, half an inch or so, down to a really fine pinpoint almost, if you're skilled at it, which I'm not. So it'll be quite. That's why we're going to start. You
with
start
primer.
With primer.
You can't mess up primer unless you spray it in your eyes or something.
Yeah, which we hopefully won't do.
And when priming, especially, or any sort of aerosolized spraying paint, you always have to do it in a well-ventilated area.
Yeah. Because the aerosol in a can is not very healthy for you. But when you're doing an airbrush, it's just air, so
it's not so bad. As long as you're not inhaling a lot of paint, it's not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, unless you've thinned your paint with, an alcohol or
mineral spirit
or something. See, that's good.
Yeah. Do you think the back's acceptable now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
The heavy veining will actually look good on TV.
Yeah, that's why I didn't go super light.
Otherwise, you wouldn't really see it. Actually, I think that worked pretty well. Getting in little groups there.
Yeah, whatever works for you. Yeah. You'll see how it works when you...
Don't do that with the... You don't happen to have a dry one there, do you?
A dry what?
Cup.
No. We need more cups. That's another thing for the inventory. We could also get little plastic pallets. Might not be a bad idea. Which I think I have one somewhere. I have no idea where. Just those little pallets with the little...
Oh yeah, the little...
divots. Those are actually very useful, and we just never use them. We use like the top of cough syrup and stuff. Just sort of working my way around the outer edge of all of this marble that I chose to do, and have no one to blame but myself. Despite it being a whole lot of work, hopefully it'll pay off in the appearance later. Do. Oh. So, I am about halfway done with the roof marbling, and then I finally get to move to the cleaning process. Which is just a lot of careful observation, looking around, making sure I'm not missing any spots, things like that. Nothing too difficult, but more just
tedious.
Well, time consuming, yeah. But, and then it's like, okay, I have this spot, this spot, this spot. Like, for example, I know there's a lot of this scarlet that needs to be cleaned up because that was one of the first things I put in. So everything I painted over ends up sometimes splattering onto the scarlet red, in which case I need to pull out the scarlet red and fix it. But I have to be careful because otherwise if I get onto the ivory, now I have to go over with the ivory to fix what I just fixed. So it can be a bit of a back and forth game, which isn't too terrible, but it does take some time. And a lot of it is just a little like doop and you're done. Just a single little dab.
Yeah, tiny little pinpoints.
Or maybe you got some orange paint on your finger. You got it all over something else in just one tiny little spot. Now you have to correct it. And the important thing with cleanup, the cleanup step, is knowing when to stop. Because you will hit a point where you're fixing things that are so small and insignificant that you'll never even think of them again. And you need to just step back and let it be, basically.
Well, now I succeeded in getting brown into all the nooks and crannies and little crevices between the shingles. By doing that, since the wash takes a long time to dry relative to the other paints, I managed to set it up so I can't do anything else with it.
The wash, yes. That's the downside of doing that first, is it stays tacky for far longer.
But I wanted to get the brown into those spaces and not have to depend on the paint, because the paint's a little thicker and it doesn't always go in there very well. So that'll, it's not real dark, but it's not bright gray, primer gray. So I could get the black wash out and do the stonework on the bottom.
That is something you could work on.
Since we've got 15 minutes yet, I could just do that. So why don't I? That's steel.
What are you looking for?
The black wash.
Under the paper
here too.
I see blue, green behind the house.
Way over here. Black wash.
We need dinner tonight.
You got a,
No, I have like
a
three.
bunch of the little ones there. Yeah.
Dinner tonight, I think, is just big salads. Right?
Mm-hmm.
On Tuesdays, we have the local farmers market, so we
Buy veggies.
buy veggies and have nice big salads for dinner on Tuesdays, generally.
So now I'm going to take this lifeless stone and put some black wash on it, and it will become
Slightly less light.
slightly less lifeless.
And I just have one side left to do in the marbling before my giant cleanup process.
And I'm going to paint all of my fingers, hopefully not touching anything.
Yes, this is the stage of painting where you've been going for a while and you're starting to lose a little focus and making mistakes. That's always a very important section of the process.
Making a mess right near the end.
Mm-hmm.
You have to clean up this, So yeah, painting can get like Minecraft, like one more brick, one more brick, one more thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you live to regret it.
Because it's suddenly you haven't moved in however long, your back hurts, and you've forgotten your posture and everything. Yeah. It's an easy trap to fall into. See, exactly. Which is something generally not considered healthy.
Okay. My color definitely needs touching up. That darker brown I put on these cross pieces,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, isn't really dry, and now it's on my fingers.
Well, that's always good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think I have all the marbling done.
Yep, you got the insides too.
Yep.
On the roof.
So, sort of like that. And it looks a little funky right now because I haven't shaded it yet. But it's getting closer, one step at a time. My next step will be cleanup before I do washing and shading. Which is the fun part, but also the very last part. So, what I'm going to do is start my cleanup process, because I still have some time here. And to do that, I will sit back, look at my piece, and see like what has splotches where they shouldn't be, what is not painted quite right. And the biggest standout is the scarlet red for me. Some other considerations is that it's really the scarlet red and the dark gray on the base are my two biggest fixes. So what I'll do is start with the scarlet red, go to the dark gray. I'll probably start putting a little lighter gray in the base as well when I fix it. But I really don't need or want much here because a lot of it is just a little bit of edge work, a couple random splotches here and there. So I really don't want too much on my brush as I just gently and carefully cover up spots here and there, mostly where other colors come and meet the brickwork on the bottom here is where a lot of the fixes are. And my main goal is honestly to not have to continue making mistakes I have to fix. So what I don't want is to get red up on the ivory, for example.
Yeah, I made a huge mess on my hands. I have to wash up. Right back.
So even just a little bit of cleaning really helps define the edges. So I've cleaned this side and I haven't cleaned this side yet. And I can give so like you can see there's some silver and white where I don't want it over here, but having cleaned the edges here, it creates a lot better sort of base for when I go in and do the weathering.
And my last bit here is to touch up all the brown spots that I touched when I shouldn't have, and put the paint on.
With your painted fingers?
Yeah.
And for touch-ups like this, I find having the paint be on the thinner side is kind of useful because it glides a bit more and won't clump into areas you don't want it to. But you don't want it so thin that it'll just slide willy-nilly over the go where you don't want it to go, basically. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but it's not such a bad thing. That's looking good enough. There's definitely spots I could define a little more on the back here in the red, but honestly, when I put wash over it, those little spots won't really be visible because they'll get filled in, especially in the little crevices and things like that. What I'm looking for are mostly the very egregious and obvious mistakes. Um, some of these spots where the ivory spilled over, a couple spots where I have silver from the statue um, on the red brick that just doesn't look quite right. Did a surprisingly good job along the edge of the statue in this section, which is nice. Of course, I also got a little red on the head of the statue. So there's sort of a back and forth that happens. And as long as you make it slightly better each time, you are technically still making progress. And while you're doing this, there's also sometimes you can find areas where you didn't get quite enough paint on the base coat. And you can go and fill in those spots a little better, just to make sure it has a more consistent look to it.
So I don't know if you remember what it looked like before, but that's how the stone base has turned out now. You can see it fills in the gaps between the stones, the mortar joints really well, and makes it look just
Uniform. That's the best part of the wash, is that it's very easy to take something that looks flat and give it a lot more depth and character than it gets with just the basic paints.
No, that's about all I can do on this today, unless I take the umber wash and start washing the wood. These pieces will get an umber wash, and it won't add too much color, but it'll show the wood grain better. And just like with the stone, it will make it look less flat. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll do that next time.
And I'm probably going to keep going a tiny bit here just because I have my paints out and I don't want to waste them. But you can feel free to start cleaning things up.
Yeah, I'm going to clean up a little bit and do the, we need to buy this inventory.
Yeah, feel free to start inventorying our paints. And there's a couple spots here. That's how it always goes, isn't it? And
You said we wanted copper.
yeah, I think some copper might be fun. I was thinking about doing the statues in copper, but we have had to wait a while for shipping and all.
Well, we do have some copper paint.
Of questionable safety.
No, it's contains petroleum distillates. Don't drink it. Avoid contact with skin.
Just don't drink it, touch it, or look at it, and you'll be fine. Right?
This is actually an antique, as you can see by looking at the price.
What does it say?
19 cents.
19 cents for a jar of paint?
Yeah, this copper has been around not quite as long as I have, but I think it's probably
Close.
I bet it's over 20 years old. It could very well be. But yeah, still, see, it's pretty copper.
It is a nice copper color.
Mm-hmm.
I just worry about the...
It's just, it doesn't say, it says don't swallow it.
20 years
Avoid
ago.
Contact with skin.
Yeah, it has all of the safety guidances that you would get on things 20 years ago.
The back panel. Okay, well, don't drink that. You see any other colors you think we might want?
I think it's kind of like anything we're low on, I'm not sure. What we restocked lots of our most used colors. But,
Still a lot of green wash and blue wash.
Ivory, if you don't have it. Copper. You said we have a lot of green wash left.
Yeah, got another scarlet red.
We still have orange, and this scarlet red's pretty full, the one I'm using. I don't know if there's any sort of...
Problem is that sometimes you can't get the same store that carries both brands.
Yes.
So when I find a place that has both of these colors, why don't you just come and look?
And we'll add in whatever.
Scan through and get some
other sort of colors that they might have that we can't necessarily think of this second. So since I have these colors out, there's a couple spots. I'm pretty happy with where the scarlet is. I haven't even started on the roof yet, but there's one or two spots where I accidentally got scarlet on the ivory. Since I have some ivory, I'll just patch those up. And the same for the silver, which I also have. Oh, right now. And that's just a matter of cleaning the brush enough.
That's our color chart.
Yes, we like to paint out any new colors we get on a piece of paper, because sometimes paint dries differently than when it looks like in the bottle. There's my silver.
And especially with the Tamiya colors, the color on the bottle cap sometimes really has almost nothing to do with the color of the paint once it dries.
And something like this scarlet red that I've been painting has a tendency to look very bright and vibrant as a red when it's wet, but it does tone down to a little more dark and saturated red when it dries. So I think my next step on this, I do have a little red cleanup, and since I have the red available, there's a couple spots on the roof here that just need a little touching up. But my next step is...
You don't get those very often.
You just wanted to show off that you're eating old-timey candy?
Old-timey Nichole candy.
Yeah, I think my next step when I come back to this will be to clean up the base, the gray on the base here. Get it on. The gray needs to be cleaned up on the very bottom here, especially around the pillars, like here. But after I get those clean and put in some gray, lighter gray splotches on some of the rock, perhaps, it will hopefully next time, this Friday, be time to do the final shadings. I also have some cleanup on the brass, but I didn't have brass out, so I didn't want to mess with it today.
And on this, the first thing is going to be to make the roof brown. And when that dries, to do some just highlighting of some of the shingles in a darker color here and there. And then get out the umber wash and wash these verticals, well, the wood basically on the side and the top and the whole roof. And that's all the same wash, but it'll give different effects at different places. So that'll be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So a lot of surface area, a little diddling around with this contrasting color, and then a wash, and then this will be done.
But yeah, so thank you for joining us. We will be back on Friday. We're probably going to we're looking at making some additional additions to the schedule, but we're not sure yet. So thanks for coming. And goodbye.